Fellow fighters, on the 13th to the 16th of December 2019, our economic emancipation movement went through a process of reflection and renewal. The Second National People's Assembly, under the theme Consolidating the Grounds Towards Socialist Power, was an occasion on which we reflected on the road we have traveled thus far and on the fulfillment of the resolution of the First National People's Assembly in Mangaung 2014. Members and delegates from branches of the EFF spoke openly on the successes and failures of the movement and discussed matters relating to policy and how to shape our revolution going forward for the next 5 years. Along this, a new leadership was elected to carry the resolutions of the conference forward and lead this gallant movement into a greater heights. Many who thought that the EFF will not make it back from the Nasrec have since had their hopes dwindle into nothing. Many of those who thought the EFF will die a painful death at Nasrec have had to watch this glorious movement grow from strength to strength and continue to be the voice of the voiceless. The EFF hosted one of the most peaceful national conferences in the history of South Africa, where members contested each other freely with no intimidation and no violence. All positions were open for contestation under the guidance of the independent electoral body, and delegates practiced the rights given to them by the Constitution and elected new Central Command team to lead the struggle for economic freedom. All the lies about the EFF being a dictatorship were exposed to be nothing but the imagination of self-hating individuals who cannot accept the fact that EFF is an alternative that is here to stay. The EFF displayed the ultimate practice of democracy in a conference that was not tainted with money and buying of positions. No secret bank accounts were opened in the name of contesting a leadership position in the Second National People's Assembly of the EFF. There were no donations from the business community or white monopoly capital that dictated the policy of the EFF or dictated who lead this economic emancipation movement. The EFF and its leadership is not bought or sponsored, and the Second National People's Assembly is a perfect example of how our organization is the only independent organization in this country, and we owe our loyalty only to the poor masses of our people. There is a huge responsibility on the shoulders of those who were elected in the Second National People's Assembly of the EFF in December 2019. The mixture of experience, commitment, youth, and gender must provide a coherent line of march for the people of South Africa and always speak truth to power even when it is not fashionable to do so. The next 5 years require a leadership that is not scared. The Central Command team of the EFF must be at the forefront of every struggle facing our people and be willing to die to change the lives of the dispossessed and exploited masses of our people. There is no longer room for mistakes or laziness. There is no longer room for mediocrity and cowardice. The Second National People's Assembly resolved that this will be the year of action against the racist financial sector, and no COVID-19 can stop us from waging this battle. There is no factional media. There is no manufactured attack on the EFF leadership that will stop us from fulfilling the mandate of that assembly. We will defend the resolutions of the Second National People's Assembly with our lives. We will never stop until the wealth of this country is in the hands of the rightful owners. We make this commitment knowing very well that we will face attack and judgment from those who will catch up later with the superior logic of the EFF. We are not strangers to being rejected. We are not strangers to character assassinations from those tasked with undermining our revolution. As long as we are armed with truth, there is nothing that can stop us from fulfilling our generational mission. There are no lies that can defeat a generational mission. Those who walked out of our National Assembly, like the ENCA, today cover the events of the EFF on frequent basis. Even they cannot deny that the EFF is an idea whose time has come. Their fake solidarity with factional media houses has been exposed to be non-existent. It is clear that it was an instruction from the Rupert that led to ENCA walking out of the assembly of the EFF, not principle. Fellow fighters, the success of the Second National People's Assembly is proof that the EFF will be here for many years to come. The resolutions we took at that assembly are a blueprint for a developmental Africa. They are a guideline to build an Africa that will no longer be feeding ground for colonialists and their agents who preside over the failing states of our continent. Among these progressive resolutions are: the EFF must build a pan-continental movement which must be driven by the ultimate objective of uniting the African people in their struggle for emancipation from imperial and neo-colonial control. The EFF must launch the Women's Command before the Third National People's Assembly. The EFF must build Winnie Madikizela Mandela Combined School, the school which will accommodate brilliant pupils who come from poor background and who have also lost their parents as a result of HIV and AIDS. The school will have an independent board of trustees and will be equipped with the best teachers and the best sporting equipment. It is a school that will champion new decolonized modes of teaching, learning, and center Africans and African development in its curriculum. The CCT and EFF members of Parliament must intensify the work geared towards amendment of Section 25 of the Constitution. This amendment must emphasize the abolishment of private ownership of land and transfer of the land as a whole to the people, and that the state must hold this land in custody on behalf of the people as a whole. The EFF must object to any amendment to the Constitution that will not result in the fundamental restructuring of property rights regime in the country. Therefore, the EFF must object to any amendments of the Constitution that will entrench the status quo and produce only superficial and imaginary changes. The EFF must advocate for the opening of agricultural colleges and promotion of the study of agriculture, land reform, and agrarian studies in our institutions of higher learning. The EFF must initiate legislative amendments to ensure that traditional leaders do not have the power to lease or sell land that belongs to the people to private companies, and that the land administration powers at local level are democratized and are affirming of the rights of women to own land. The CCT must establish a Pan-African agricultural development entity which will strengthen intra-continental trade and Pan-African ownership of the agricultural value chains. This entity must focus on providing appropriate infrastructure to identify projects and provide developmental funding and guarantee access to markets across the African continent. The EFF must establish alternative broadcast, radio, and print media to guard against the negative characterization of socialist ideals and the left in general. The EFF must advocate for the complete decommodification of healthcare and for it to be constitutionally declared as an essential human right. The EFF must work with progressive forces to ensure that SOEs are repositioned to play a central role in building state capacity. We must continue to call for the use of SOEs to drive the industrialization and development of the economy, and use of SOEs to ensure the delivery of services to South African people, advocate for strengthening of current SOEs and establishment of the following new state-owned enterprises: state-owned road construction company, state-owned cement company, various state-owned banks, in particular in retail-owned bank, agricultural-owned bank, housing bank, social assistance bank, state-owned pharmaceutical company, state-owned healthcare equipment company, a state-owned mining company, and state-owned food stocking company. We must launch a campaign for the closure of all private ports of entry to South Africa, particularly the Fireblade terminal in OR Tambo International Airport. To also launch a public campaign against illicit financial flows targeted at companies involved in illicit financial flows. Equality within different sporting codes must be enforced. Women in sports should be treated equally to their male counterparts. The gap in their salaries should be bridged, and companies who are giving sponsorship to male teams should also be encouraged to give the same sponsorship to female teams. A program of action must be drawn up and implemented that will dismantle the control and power white administrators and officials still have over South African sport at amateur level and professional level, particularly in rugby and cricket. The EFF will introduce legislation in Parliament for the introduction of a special inspectorate in the Department of Labour to monitor, report on, and enforce gender parity and equality in the workplace. The leadership that is elected at the Second National People's Assembly must agitate for the complete unification of African continent, which will include one currency for all the countries of the continent, one reserve bank which will be empowered to formulate, implement monetary policy, promote financial stability, issue bank notes, and provide banking services to governments. The EFF must agitate for a united African continent with one federal government, one federal army, and affirm the higher authority of Pan-African Parliament as the ultimate legislative body for the continental matters. The EFF must agitate for the establishment of a permanent African Defence Force. This force must be deployed to defend the continent against the outside interference from imperialist forces, to be deployed to remove undemocratic governments from power on the African continent, and to be deployed to quickly quell unjustified insurrections by terrorist groups and sponsored groups seeking to destabilize the continent. The economic freedom fighters should particularly campaign for the discontinuation of the US military base in the various parts of the African continent. The EFF in the national and provincial legislatures and in its political programs must fight against any attempts at recolonizing Africa through trade deals and bilateral agreements that seeks to impose imperial control over South Africa and the continent at large. These key resolutions constitute the core program of the economic freedom fighters over the next 5 years. The leadership collective must ensure that it is constantly guided by these resolutions of our highest decision-making body. It is only the pursuit of these ideals, together with our 7 non-negotiable cardinal pillars, that we will ensure that the EFF continue to live long and remain in the hearts and minds of Africans all over the continent and the world. Comrades and compatriots, in South Africa today, there is a faction that seeks to suggest that undermining of state capacity and moving closer towards neoliberal market policies is what will save our economy and create jobs. At the center of their ideas is that we must surrender ourselves to the private sector by selling our state-owned enterprises, handing over our economy, and becoming dependent on people whose sole purpose in life is to make profit. This idea, which is championed by Ramaphosa and the DA, must be rejected with the contempt it deserves. It is the definition of pure madness to say that since people are poor under capitalism, we must practice an intensified version of capitalism and we will see different results. The question we must ask is, where has capitalism been a success? Is it successful to maintain the privilege of the few and pretend that everyone is competing equally? Is it successful to exploit the labor of the majority for the benefit of the minority? Capitalism and neoliberal policies have failed in South Africa. They have proven to be policies that entrench privilege and exploit the majority of our people. We must begin to explore an economic alternative and not be hostile to that alternative by imposing sanctions and conducting military invasions and then claiming that alternative economic systems are bound to fail. Nowhere in the world has socialism failed because it is an inferior system. Rather, there has been imperialist sabotage of socialist economies because these economies undermine the interest of those who have an uncontrollable appetite to be rich. In spite of this, we have case studies of successful economies and societies which are socialist in orientation and outlook. China, Singapore, Cuba are key examples of nations that have built their own economies through nationalization and placing state-owned entities at the center of their developmental agenda. Sadly, those leading South Africa today have no vision. They have no capacity to research alternative economic models, and they offer no new solutions. They suffer from an inferiority complex and cannot think beyond an economy that benefits the West and is designed in the image of Europe and underdevelopment of Africa. They rely on the failed economic policies of the 1996 class project and the failed GEAR, which grow the economy for the wealthy while the millions remain unemployed and hopeless. Our call that only scientific and sound ideas should lead to reopening of the economy has been proven to be correct. Despite our warning, Mr. Ramaphosa fell into the trap of the white capitalist establishment and reopened schools and the economy prematurely. South Africa's COVID-19 cases are at more than 400,000 and are now at the 5th highest in the world because of the puppet president who always dances to the tune of the white capitalist establishment. Maybe we're too optimistic to expect Ramaphosa to do anything that will save the lives of black people. We have not forgotten of the workers killed in Marikana due to his call for concomitant actions. We care about the livelihoods of the people, and we know that in order to live, a lot of our people must work. But work under the current condition comes with the risk of a very dangerous disease. The response of the Department of Health is less than satisfactory, and building of the temporary hospitals in conference venues is not a wise decision. There is a massive shortage of quality healthcare facilities in South Africa. We should be building hospitals and healthcare systems that must be with us forever, not temporary hospitals. Everyone in South Africa should have a healthcare facility, and properly trained healthcare workers, professionals, must be deployed to those facilities. During times of war, many countries in the world train thousands of people as soldiers to form part of the reserve army. We are now in a war situation. Let us train the unemployed graduates and other professionals with basic healthcare skills. Every willing citizen should be equipped with basic knowledge and expertise of primary health care so that we do not all depend on the already broken health system for our recovery. We are in a war situation, so we should act as a collective to fight against the disease. In this war, let us also call on our scientists, particularly those advising Department of Health, to stick to proper professional principles. In the beginning of the first lockdown, which was meant to last for 21 days, the scientists said we should retain strict lockdown regulations if there are more than 100 infections per day. Currently, South Africa has an average of 13,000 infections per day, and the same scientists are advising government to open schools and loosen strict lockdown regulations. The question we should ask is, whose agenda are these scientists serving? Because science must not change due to political convenience. We do not want scientists who sacrifice scientific principle on the altar of political convenience. Scientists have an obligation like Stats SA to at all times tell the truth, nothing but the truth. It is evident, however, that the scientists advising government are in the pockets of politicians and possibly of the white monopoly capital establishment because their advice is changed to suit the agenda of politicians and white monopoly capital. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed this mindset, which worship capitalism as superior and that no society can be sustained by loyalty to profit over the lives of people. The poverty of leadership in South Africa has been revealed, and we can see that all we are left with are a bunch of criminals who think that a global health pandemic is an opportunity to eat. The corruption under the new dawn of Ramaphosa has become worse, and this time during a time in which humanity is fighting an invisible enemy. All those who were doing the PR for Ramaphosa have suddenly gone into hiding, while he and his comrades steal money as if there is no tomorrow. It is worse in the Eastern Cape, where 4.8 million is used to conduct door-to-door campaigns, and 10 million is spent on embarrassing scooters that serve no purpose. The lack of industrialization has resulted in loss of life and high rate of infections because as a nation, we are unable to produce our own personal protective equipment and ventilators. Nurses and doctors are getting infected while the state is renting hotels, venues, and resorts to house COVID-19 patients because they are victims of a tender system and cannot speedily conduct any construction work to build hospitals. The EFF is proven right once more that we are led by people who do not have foresight and capacity. The only skill they have is that of stealing and subjecting masses of our people to inhumanity. Today, they have abandoned their responsibility to lead and have told us it is in our hands. The hypocrite Ramaphosa conducts weekly family meetings to reprimand South Africans, yet he failed to take responsibility for his failure and poor decisions. Instead of listening to the sound advice and ignoring his funders, he has resorted to preparing graves for the living because they know there is nothing they can do to save lives. Ramaphosa has shown that he is hell-bent on being given an exhibition of loss of life and uncontrollable infections before making decisions that will protect the lives of people. It is this type of decision-making that has put this country in jeopardy. When the EFF called for the mandatory quarantining of infected individuals instead of careless directive of self-quarantining, Ramaphosa did not listen. In a press briefing by political party leaders, we told Ramaphosa to act harshly on his public representative who have a tendency of corruption in a time of human crisis. He chose to ignore us. Today, catering tenders are being awarded for virtual meetings in ANC municipalities. When we want the private healthcare sector to either play a progressive role in fighting the coronavirus or face nationalization, Ramaphosa giggled. Today, our people are fighting each other for oxygen in public hospitals and in healthcare workers dying because of lack of PPEs. When the EFF provided coherent and concrete economic solution to alleviate the impact of the lockdown on poor South Africans through the implementation of payment holidays, business relief measures, a radical cutting of the repo rate, and provision of unemployment grant, Ramaphosa did not listen. Instead, he chose to advertise a loan scheme of the Rupert as a relief measures for small business. It was the EFF that diagnosed from the onset that the continued sale of alcohol will overburden healthcare infrastructure and divert attention from efforts to help fight COVID-19. Ramaphosa delayed in implementing this guidance. After implementing an alcohol ban, Ramaphosa backtracked on the ban, which resulted in a spike of patients in trauma units across South Africa and increase of COVID-19 infections. It was this president who made homicidal decision to ease lockdown regulations, reopening mines, businesses, restaurants, casinos, and schools. COVID-19 cases have since increased sharply, and death has followed. The most painful has been the reopening of schools, which came at the advice of a candidate for a title, Dr. Death, Professor Salim Karim. This is a health expert who abandoned his own scientific evidence for economic expediency and supported the program as using children as a testing of waters for the impact of the deadly coronavirus. Today, Ramaphosa closes schools as a public stand and based on temporary fear instead of science. Typical of him and his lack of being able to assess the behavior of this pandemic, he has chosen to close schools for 3 weeks and 1 week for matriculants without any scientific evidence that there will be a decrease in cases and death by that time. Ramaphosa is doing nothing but giving his cronies a fresh opportunity to apply for PPE tenders and once again give schools sanitizers with low alcohol content and inferior masks, a level of corruption that must be read as a human rights violation. There is no infrastructure development that will be done in public schools during this time, and the storm of the coronavirus will affect the lives of young black children the most. Most painfully, the apartheid character of our schooling system is exposed, as private schools which have had the advantage of digital learning will continue to not be affected. The consequences of this are that the privileged will continue to have an advantage in entering institutions of higher learning and job market. The rich will continue to be educated while the poor will succumb to substance abuse and neglect. Ramaphosa's government has not used the opportunity provided by the lockdown to distribute digital learning material to public schools and develop adequate infrastructure. And this must prove to us that this government no longer has the capacity to lead this country. Furthermore, we wish to caution the country not to be hypnotized by Ramaphosa's claims that South Africa has one of the world's lowest mortality rates as a result of COVID-19. The South African Medical Research Council has reported a 59% increase in mortalities recorded as a natural death in South Africa during this period, a substantial increase compared to historical data. This has led scientists to believe that there is an inaccurate recording of COVID-19 related death in the country and effectively under recording of COVID-19 death. This is not difficult to believe considering the recording and reporting of COVID-19 data is being handled by politicians who will manipulate data to suit their narrative. The EFF, therefore, calls for an immediate independent scientific review of COVID-19 figures. No politician must assume the role of health statistician as figures are being manipulated by national government and the Western Cape government to give the impression that the South African government is doing a better job than the rest of the world in handling COVID-19. PR stunts and attempting to score cheap political points by manipulating data is not going to help us. Our commitment to a collective effort to fight this virus can never be questioned. However, this government has continued to show us its commitment to stealing rather than saving lives. Ramaphosa has said nothing on the rampant corruption that has characterized the handling of COVID-19 relief funds. He has decided to convene the nation and condemn corruption instead of convening those he leads with who are at the forefront of stealing COVID-19 money and creating dodgy companies to get tenders. As a president who has himself sealed records in court to hide his funders who effectively bought him the presidency while he was deputy president, Ramaphosa leads by example in covering up corruption. Corruption is institutionalized in the ANC-led government, and Ramaphosa's chief, Lieutenant Pravin Gordhan, has declared that not all corruption is criminal. We therefore expect very little to be done by Ramaphosa regarding corruption during this time, as a man who has been complicit in the misuse of state funds in all his time in public office. There is no 500 billion that the people will see. The most concrete commitment made to us all has been the graves that have been secured before people have even died. Ramaphosa has consistently ignored calls for science and epidemiological evidence to be at the center of the easing of lockdown regulations and reopening of social and economic activities. Ramaphosa's delayed fashion of following correct advice will be his downfall. Sadly, innocent lives will be lost in the process. It is surprising that this Ramaphosa wants to grandstand once a month with some chicken morality and lecture people on being irresponsible, when he has been at the forefront as an irresponsible leader whose loyalty is to the money and not the people. We want to warn South Africa that the decision to be led by mediocrity will result and will end in tears. Ramaphosa completely abdicated his responsibility as a leader of society and assumed the position of an absent father who has chosen his family of Minels, Ruppers, and Oppenheimers over the lives of the destitute and the poor masses. The only measure that makes sense is a return to level 5 of lockdown, while providing the necessary relief to business and the poor in order to protect lives from this deadly coronavirus. Failure to make this decision will lead to thousands of poor black lives being lost and will not let Ramaphosa get away with an orchestrated massacre of black people in the same way he did with Marikana. The EFF will continue to make progressive contributions to combating the spread of coronavirus at the level of guidance and resources. To date, the EFF has already donated 12 million to the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund to assist with the purchase of PPEs and improving health infrastructure. We want to warn the ruling party that we are monitoring all reports of corruption, and should we find that they have stolen money that the EFF public representatives have sacrificed to help the poor and sick, there will be hell to pay. In 2021, South Africa is supposed to hold local government elections, and it is evident now that there will not be free, fair, transparent, and democratic elections in 2021. Political parties, old and new, would have by now started with the election program. But because of Corona, all political parties are deprived the essential democratic right to canvass for votes. We therefore call on all political parties to engage in a democratic parliamentary process that should postpone the 2021 local government elections to 2024 and introduce a single elections regime, which will mean that there should be only one election in South Africa from 2024 onwards. The system of election after every 2.5 years is unnecessary and extremely costly. In this regard, The EFF is in the process of finalizing a policy position and will table a private member's bill in Parliament to postpone the 2021 local government elections and institute a system of one election every 5 years. Fellow fighters, the war against women and children continues even in the midst of a global pandemic. In this country, it has become a pandemic on its own, and the women and children live in fear of the men of this country who abuse and murder women and show no mercy to children and the elderly. It is South African men who are abusing women in this country, yet we find the same men leading the charge of blaming criminality on our African brothers and sisters. Enough is enough. It is time for a decisive response to gender-based violence, and that response must be led by women themselves. The struggle against apartheid was led by black people. You cannot expect a white man to lead a struggle against apartheid. In the same way, you cannot expect men to lead a struggle against gender-based violence. It is in the hands of our women leadership to lead us and show us direction, because all of men are trash and we are responsible for all the inhumanity our women and children are confronted with. So we should not even act better, or should not even think that we are better placed to provide solution to the oppressed. In this case, the oppressed is women and children. Our women must lead from the front and tell us what we should do in supporting them in the fight against this nonsensical abuse of women and children. What is more painful is that the courts of this country have become allies of perpetrators, granting lenient sentences to those who rape and abuse women and children. We have been made aware of a systematic problem of men who are guilty being given lenient sentences which are against the minimum requirements according to the law and existing precedences. Most notably, we are aware of a magistrate named Koleka Botlani in KwaZulu-Natal who has a tendency of releasing child abusers with ridiculous reasons, yet she remained on the benches of our judiciary. The EFF has therefore resolved to set up a gender-based violence desk which will respond directly to the plague of violence against women, children, and the LGBTQI+ community. This desk will be comprised by commissars from the Central Command Team and relevant professionals in the field of health, legal aspects, and social workers to be able to intervene on cases of gender-based violence. Furthermore, the desk will have, as part of its mandate, the identifying of corrupt and incompetent judges who have history of handing down irrational and insensitive judgments to perpetrators of gender-based violence and releasing them back into our communities where they inflict more harm. This initiative is part of the many practical responses the EFF has undertaken, namely such as the labor desk, which is headed by the national chairperson, to respond to the problems facing our country and the continent. We cannot wait to be in government to make a meaningful impact in the lives of people, because those who abuse and exploit our people are on the rampage on the daily basis. Comrades, the EFF has once again been vindicated on its position of the rampant anti-black racism in South Africa and the world. When we warned South Africans of the dangers of false unity which is built through sports, many called us negative and said we are against social cohesion. What those who criticized us did not know is that by celebrating the fake unity of the Rainbow Nation through sports, they were making it more difficult for black sportsmen and women to speak out against the isolation and racism they experience in the sporting industry. By insisting on fake unity and a lie of social cohesion, you have made it difficult for those who are lonely and undermined in the sporting industry to speak out and fight for change in the treatment of black people in sports. When Makhaya Ntini says he felt lonely during his career in South African cricket, he is speaking about the pain of being undermined and isolated in the country of his forefathers. When Makhaya Ntini says he used to jog to the stadium to avoid being made to feel out of place in the national cricket team, he speaks about the judgment black people get from the white gaze. A white gaze that makes you feel inferior and out of place in the land of your birth. The experience of Makhaya Ntini and Siya Kolisi, who was made to feel stupid and subjected to Africans in the Springbok team, is the ugly reality of white-dominated sports which refuse to transform in this country. It is anti-black racism which does not care about talent or skill, but uses blacks for success and celebrate with black players on the field while it isolates black players behind closed doors. We call on all black players within white-dominated sports teams to use this opportunity to speak out and shatter the Rainbow Nation lie that has trapped them into silence for so long. They no longer need to live in fear or maintain the lies of fake unity. It is only through the truth that there can be meaningful change and racism can be defeated. Fellow fighters,